俺の拳を試すか Come on!
This is gonna be a match to remember. Fight!
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Slovenly Gamer Podcast. I am your host Milton, and on this week's show, I'm flying solo, but you know, it's going to be a short show because I'm not feeling that well. Kind of been working a lot recently, and I'm a little bit under the weather, but I just had to sit down and record this quick show because I got a couple things that actually would just want to freestyle and ramble about today. And also a couple topics that people have asked me to kind of talk, you know, to speak to a little bit. Those topics, which include the casting of Donald Glover as a young Han Solo, as a young Lando Calrissian in the Han Solo standalone film. Honestly, there's not much to go off of yet. I think people are just excited about the idea of this movie happening, and they're also excited about the idea of Donald Glover specifically being casted as the character. My opinion right off the bat, I can tell you that that's brilliant. I don't think, if I'm looking at the landscape of young black actors right now, I don't think they could have made a better choice, and I think, quite frankly, he's the only choice that they could have made. I really think he's going to embody this character. Like, you know, there's, you know, sometimes you see casting or sometimes you hear murmurs of certain, you know, like a person being casted in a film or being casted as a particular character that, you know, we all love or we're somewhat familiar with. And you're just instantly like, there's no fucking way this guy's not going to do it. It doesn't make any sense, whatever. But the moment I heard Glover is going to be Lando, I was just like, yes, that makes perfect sense. I can see it. You know, like I can just, you know, it just seemed perfect. It just seemed right. Like there was nothing, you know, necessarily negative for me to say, or I had no negative reaction in terms of that particular casting. My only worry comes in is the depiction of the character, you know, his role, how much on-screen time he's gonna get, all those kind of different things, all those subtle things. You know, the play and the chemistry between him and the dudes. His last name is like Einrich, I believe, who's now casted as a young Han Solo. So those are the things that I worry about. Overall story and all those kind of things. Like Disney is gonna do a great job. Like I told people the first time Disney got a hold of, you know, the rights for this film, I said Disney is a trusted source. Like you guys are in California. You guys know, like you go to Disneyland, everybody is in love with Disney because that's what Disney does. Disney has built its business, it's built its legacy on telling stories and building worlds. So that's what they do. And now with the whole Star Wars license, I believe that they're going to take it to whole new heights. And quite frankly, as of right now, and based on what I've seen in the past with Disney and based on what I'm seeing right now with Disney, I don't worry. I'm not worrying at all. Well, let me retract that a little bit. Not at all. A little bit. Because sometimes they can get too caught up in the idea. I don't want them to get too caught up in the idea of selling toys, much like what Lucas did. So that's like my only concern. I don't necessarily think they're going to go down that route. I think they understand the product that they have. I think they understand the beauty of the world and the story and everything. So I think that what they're going to do is they're going to pull from all this information, all past canon, you know, fanfic probably, and all these different things, and they're going to create a massive, cohesive, awesome world for Star Wars. Because that's another thing. People are like, oh, everything doesn't matter from before and it's all trash now. And like it always makes me upset. And I feel like the people who say that tend to be people who are Johnny-come-latelys and not necessarily real Star Wars fans. Because if you are and you've been invested in the lore and the history, you understand that there's a much too much good information there, and there's much too much cohesive story in there for them to just throw away whole cloth. Like it would be stupid to pay billions of dollars for something, have all these resources out there to kind of like create a new world from, and don't use it and just throw it all away. Like that's absolutely moronic. Like it makes no sense. Like, you're not gonna pay 17 billion or whatever, however much billions that they paid for the whole Star Wars thing, and then throw it all out the window and try to like start like. That's insane. Like, are you crazy? Like, who the hell in their right mind would think that's a good business idea? No, you would pull from the resources and you pull from everything that happened in the past, like the entire universe and expanded universe, and you can create a better cohesive world based on all that information that's there. So, you know, you got to know what to eat from the plate and what to leave on the plate. And I think that whoever's in charge of doing that at Disney, I think they noticed that, and I can tell they noticed that based on what I saw with episode 7, The Force Awakens, and based on what I'm seeing with Rogue One, I can tell that they totally understand that and they totally get it, and I think they're going to do an excellent job with this, and I'm not necessarily worried at all. I think it's going to be great, man. Like, I'm super, super excited for this. I have waited for so long. I mean, the first time I saw, you know, a Star Wars film was like maybe like in the 80s, like 89 or 90 or something like that, 1989, 1990. So, and I've always wanted to, you know about the story between Lando and Han. So now, you know, years later, now we're finally getting that chance, even though we have to wait until, I believe it's slated to be released in 2018. So, you know, at least we know for sure, the fans, we know for sure that this is coming, and there's, you know, we can have some valid excitement to what's going to happen. So I'm super excited about it. It's so interesting. Like, now I'm actually, I'm freestyling, and I was going to say, like, I made a few notes, but the Star Wars thing wasn't supposed to be the first thing I started talking about. But as you guys know, I'm a massive Star Wars fan. So obviously, you know, that's, you know, the excitement of that alone, you know, just like gets me going. So the next thing is the Rogue One. So Rogue One is coming out pretty soon. We have about maybe 2 months or something like that until Rogue One drops. Now, there's been a lot of talk back and forth, and everyone's like, you know, wondering what's going to happen. Again, with these Disney Star Wars movie, I don't research a lot. I don't like get too crazy. The only time I'm going to research is probably, I'm actually researching right now because I'm going to do a Rogue One episode of the podcast. But in terms of like looking at the trailers and going all crazy and doing all this nonsense, I don't do that. And the reason why I don't do that is because I feel like when you're going into large movies like this, whether it's Lotar, it's Harry Potter, it's whatever blockbuster movie that, you know, that's like spans, you know, 3 or 4 series and movies or whatever, I feel like for every film, you kind of have to go in fresh. You kind of have to go in with new eyes. And I feel like people tend to spoil themselves. And that's where a lot of the negative or somewhat mistaken critiques come from these films, is like, just go in beer. Just don't be overly obsessive about the trailers. Don't be overly analytical for no reason when you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Go in, sit down, watch the film, maybe watch it 2 or 3 times, you absorb things, and then when you go back and you sit down, you can then have a more formulated idea of probably what you saw, and then you can kind of like, you know, start creating all these theories because you've basically had a chance to kind of take in all this information on multiple occasions. So now with the Rogue One thing, everyone's like, oh, you know, we're going to get to see the people, you know, who built like the Death Star and who did this and who did that. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Like, you know, I'm a fan. And the thing is, most of the people who are getting excited and kind of hopping too early on all these things, it makes me laugh because I'm like, when I mentioned the name, and I remember, shout out to my friend, my buddy, Outlaw Sean, he tweeted to me on Twitter, but a couple other people kind of broached the subject with me as well. And they were like, hey, you know, the guy who kind of created the Death Star is going to be, you know, is supposed to be in Rogue One. And I'm like, and I remember speaking to a couple other people, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, and I think it's like, oh my gosh, I forgot his name. It's like Plebo or something like that. The lesser, all you true Star Wars fans, you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm under the weather and my brain is fried right now, so you have to pardon me. But he was the guy who actually led the construction of the first Death Star and not necessarily invented it, if I can remember clearly. It was the brainchild of a group of Geonosians who actually came up with the Death Star. And that's something really exciting to see. That's something exciting to talk about. And kind of finally get to see that on film, especially people who are actual Star Wars fans, because you can kind of, because this has been the thing for us, like, Star Destroyers, Death Star, that has been the thing. So now to finally get to see the people behind it, finally getting to see, how this idea was formulated and, early construction and the ideas and the thoughts and the feelings that kind of went into building these things, I think is awesome. My thing actually, I think, one of the characters I'm hoping that I see, and I'm not sure I'll probably get to see on film yet, because again, I'm not like, harping too much on this. I just want to go in fresh. I would like to see a little bit on the big screen, the background story of the first, I believe he was the first Grand Moff, the Grand Moff Odile Viking. Now, you guys are probably going to be like, who the hell is that? Now, everything that you've seen in Star Wars thus far, to date, in terms of the Empire's military prowess and their ability and everything like that, is basically owed to this guy. I think also he was the guy who kind of came up not only with their military strategy, but came up with like the idea for some of their ships. And the whole thing with him was he was such a brilliant guy, and he knew, and he had such a far eye, he had so much wisdom that he actually enacted plans like way back, I think in like Hyperspace War, like Old Republic. This like goes like millennia back, that he knew he would never get to see. So much so, as a matter of fact, I believe that Viking actually died on a ship that was like supposed to be the prototype of a Star Destroyer. Now that's something I would be interested to see. That's something I'd be excited about. And that's just from the perspective of a Star Wars fan, is like knowing this background story and finally getting to see that on the screen. But also the thing of, if you're not, and you're just kind of hopping on board with the recent films and like with the recent, resurgence of love for Star Wars, what I would say is kind of like, you can probably go on YouTube, and there's a really good like 45-minute video or so where it kind of like talks about the whole Old Republic timeline and things like that, especially if you're going to be watching Rogue One and you're not necessarily familiar with any of that old school content, because that's more like, hardcore Star Wars fans. And it's fine. I'm trying not to be, an elitist asshole, but and I feel by trying not to be that, I actually have to help out people. So give you information and tell you exactly where to go to get information, so you can kind of get up to speed with what's going on in the world, and when certain, characters are brought up, or certain sectors are spoken about, or certain battles are spoken about. You're not, sitting there with your mouth open catching flies, because you have no idea what the hell people are talking about. So go back, watch this stuff. Don't let people tell you that anything that's old is useless now. Anyone who tells you that, hey, you can't go back and watch old Star Wars films, or read, the old comics, or, or EU stuff and things like that, and they try to tell you that it's useless now, they're a fucking moron. Don't listen to them. That person does not know what the hell they're talking about. Because what's going to happen is, like I said earlier, Disney's going to pick and choose from all of those things, and all those things of old are gonna kind of be blended up and made into something new. So you need that information. And the thing is, it's that because they're pulling from things of old, and I noticed it with Episode 7, actually, Force Awakens. A lot of people missed a lot of things in that film because they're now getting on to Star Wars. So there's a lot, there's a lot of conversations, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of subtle hints at people that, unless you're a Star Wars fan, you're not going to know about. So you cannot get the full enjoyment of the film. You cannot get the full enjoyment of the story. So go back, enjoy those things, learn. It's fine. Like, enjoy it. So when you go into these films, you can kind of go in, fresh, but also having a semblance of understanding of the story that's being told, and a semblance of an understanding of what you're actually seeing. Anyone who tries to tell you, because trust me, Star Wars universes are massive, and I don't care if Disney's doing them or Lucas is doing them. Sometimes it can be confusing if you haven't gotten the right information, and if you haven't like read up on it a little bit. So, again, don't listen to anyone who tells you that. Anyone who tells you, don't go back and read anything and it's all useless now. They're a fucking idiot. Don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. You need to do that because that's where they're pulling from. That is the source material. So go back, read it. It's like saying, oh, you don't need to read, the Harry Potter books or whatever. Like, who the fuck would say that? Like, you would never say that because you understand that, okay, even though they're different mediums or even though they're different exercises, there's that the books are still that source material. So, the old movies, the comics and so on and so forth and all these other things that Lucas did, those things are still the source material for the new world that Disney is kind of creating for Star Wars right now. So we'll get to see that. Even with the with the Han Solo movies and like the Rogue Ones, like, the in-between stories. So they're doing things that we've always wanted as fans, and fans have done in terms of comic book forms and random novels and things like that, giving us that. But now we have a quote unquote, a canon, an official canon, because Disney paid billions of dollars for it. So they can get to say what's canon and what's not canon. And that's perfectly fine. That's fair. But they're pulling from all of that stuff. So it's very, very important, to pull from that. I mean, look at it. I think the character that was the Forrest Whitaker plays Saw. I think Saw, like, he was in the Clone Wars, like the animated series. You know what I'm saying? So think about that. If someone, don't watch that, that's stupid. If you saw Saw or you didn't, if you go into this film not experiencing anything prior and you see Saw and you're like, why is this guy so important? You're not gonna understand anything. You're gonna be lost for most of this film, and you don't want to do that. Like, you're gonna be lost for most of this series, like, and you don't want to do that. And it may take you a while to catch up. Some people catch on faster than others, and some don't. So I'm speaking mostly to those who kind of, this is not necessarily their forte. So these kind of things take a while for them to kind of, to catch up to. But that's the thing. It's fine. Like, enjoy the universe, enjoy it. Like, you can enjoy all the old stuff, quote unquote, everything that's like non-canon, as they want to say, which is rubbish, but rubbish and not so rubbish at the same time. But you can enjoy all that stuff. You go into the films, you know exactly what's going on. For example, can you imagine someone telling you, oh, don't watch, the original 3 films, and it doesn't matter right now, and they're not canon, or don't watch this, it's not canon, or don't read anything, don't read the comics with Han Solo, don't read the comics with Lando Calrissian. I'm almost certain that they're gonna pull from a lot of that stuff, from a lot of that quote unquote non-canon stuff, from a lot of the comic books and a lot of the novels. They're gonna pull from a lot of those kind of things and put in to the to the standalone film that we're gonna see with the two of them. Now imagine, you don't even pick up any of the novels, any of the comics. You don't watch any of the old school films. You have no levels to go into to understand why these characters are behaving the way that they are towards each other. You have, like, you're starting from scratch. Like, you have no idea what's going on with these characters. And I feel like people who tell people to not enjoy those old things are doing people who want to be Star Wars fans and who find Star Wars interesting and who are just trying to with the whole lore right now. You're doing them a great disservice. Enjoy it, folks. Go back. If you want to play the old video games, it's fine. Trust me. The Star Wars universe is massive. You can enjoy it all. And I can almost guarantee you that if you do, as I'm telling you, you go back and you enjoy that, when you see the films, you're going to get a little bit more enjoyment from the films, because there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to notice and you can hint at. And like, I mean, that happened to me in, with episode 7. That always happens to me, when everyone's talking about Star Wars. I can always kind of just tell you about old things. I'm like, well, maybe it's this Sith Lord, or maybe it's that Sith Lord. And sometimes people don't even know. And the only times, people kind of know when I'm start talking about like original Sith, people don't even, that's another thing. People don't have an understanding that the original Sith race is a red skin race. Like, they're not the quote unquote Sith like Vader and all the others that you see right now. This, in the new Star Wars films, like, the prequels, episode 4, 5, and 6 and so on, like, all the Sith nations that you're seeing right now, the Sith that you're seeing, the Empire that you're seeing right now, is basically a neo-Sith culture. Like, these are people who have people, and when I say people, I mean like different races and things like that have adopted the quote unquote Sith faith. And what I mean by that is the Sith were a race of red-skinned people. And I'm not going to give all the information out because I want you guys to go research it for those who are not familiar so you can get a better understanding of it. But they were kind of born into quote unquote the dark side of the Force. They used it. They were like dark side, like they embraced the dark side of the Force. They, you know, they were like their natural, you know, dark Force wielders. So, and you know, they had some issues on their planet. You know, there was a civil war and so on and so on. And I'm gonna mention a name because he's also very pivotal in the story in terms of that. His name is Naga Sadao. Trust me, he's a very badass dude. But you know, so like there's things like that. So if I say that, which I, you know, if I say that to you, someone who's not necessarily familiar, someone who was told that it's not important to go back and read all that old stuff, and I say, hey, do you know that, you know, the Sith right now, like they're not the original Sith, and I go back and I start to explain like all these theories of why, you know, it could, you know, who, you know, who's against them now could necessarily be like an old original Sith Lord. They may be like, their mind, you know, the head is gonna explode. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what do you mean, like, original Sith? I thought these guys were Sith. And it's like, no, like, most of the Sith now, they're people of different races, and a lot of them are also fallen Jedi and different things like that. So there's, and if you go back and you read the old stuff, you get all, you know, you get the wealth of all that information, you get the enjoyment of all the stories. So when you come forward now and you're seeing the movies and you hear people having conversations about certain things, you have more of a clarity and more of an understanding of what's going on in the universe. You can kind of see what's coming, and there's like, you know, subtle hints at things and subtle hints at battles and past events that happen. And it's like, you know, if you never went back and you enjoyed those stories before, you'll never fully understand it. And a final thing on this ramble, on the Star Wars ramble, is that in episode 7, with the whole the lightsaber thing, the whole Ben Kenobi, I believe, lightsaber. If you don't, and I'm not gonna spoil it, but if you didn't necessarily watch any of the old Star Wars films or, you know, engage in any of the old Star Wars stuff, you don't understand any of that. None of that makes sense to you. That's why it's important to go back and enjoy that stuff, because that is the source material in which Disney is going to pull from to create this massive new universe that we're all going to get to enjoy together. So for all the old Star Wars heads, I know, be patient with the people. You know, I know we can be super elitist. Trust me, I know that. I'm that guy. And I'm trying not to be that guy anymore. It's perfectly understandable. I think as ambassadors, as people who love Star Wars, we should take it upon ourselves to, you know, welcome in, you know, the new nerds, the new Star Wars nerds into our ranks, and give them education. Let them know what they should read. Tell them what videos they should watch. Tell them why certain battles are important. Tell them, you know, explain to them the importance of, you know, Master Belthalusis. Explain, you know, who Hylo Viz was. Explain the power that the Hutt cartel wields, you know, because they don't understand things like that, you know, so they think Jabba the Hutt is just some big fat sloppy looking worm guy who sits in, you know, had a slave layer costume. Like, they don't understand the true power of the Hutt cartel. All these things needs to be, you know, taken in, needs to be enjoyed, because as Disney creates this new world for us, those are all things that are going to come back, and you're going to need to know, you know, a little bit of background about those things. So that's just, you know, my 2 cents on that whole thing. Second thing I wanted to talk about, one of the other things, just not 2 topics I'm going to talk about today, is, so last night, episode 1, season 7, The Walking Dead premiered. Now, if you guys have listened before, you guys know I've been a big fan of the comic. I've been reading it forever. I heard, so I'm going to start at like kind of like the beginning to kind of come up to give you guys a better understanding, to give you guys some context. Frank Darabont was originally attached to this story, so I was super excited. Wow, fucking Frank Darabont, this is going to be great. He did The Green Mile, a host of other films. You need to go look him up. He's amazing. He's brilliant. So I was like, okay, this is going to be great. Like, I mean, Frank Darabont. Right off the cuff, there start being problems. There's problems. Frank Darabont wanted to do a standalone movie, like a prequel movie, into the series. AMC said, fuck that, no. And on top of fuck that, we are also going to cut the budget for every season of the show. And some of you may notice, some of you may not notice. As the seasons tend to go on, you notice the budget cuts. It's very, very obvious. I'm a big zombie movie, horror movie fan. I'm into FX make, and all that kind of stuff like that. And it's very, very noticeable. It's very, like, I actually have friends who do makeup and they do FX and they talk about how noticeable the quality is. I have people who are regular people who just watch that show just because, hey, fuck it, it's zombies and they think zombies are cool and they're not necessarily into the whole quote unquote zombie culture thing. But they notice a dip in the quality. So off and on over the last 6 seasons, I've had a love-hate relationship with it. Certain episodes have been great and certain episodes, not even episodes, certain seasons have been like absolute shite. So I was just like, okay, you know what? Last season 6 ended okay. Here's Negan. I read the comics, so I'm familiar with all that's going on. And I tried to, and I also over that time, I had to kind of like come to the understanding, and it was hard. I'll admit it, that this is a different module. Like, this is a different medium of storytelling. This is TV, and even though the comics are great, there's a lot of shit that they can't, that they can get away with in the comic and they can do in the comic that they can't do. And there's also a lot of things that they could do, but because AMC is fucking cheap, they're going to not do certain things and they're going to not tell the story in a particular way that it needs to be told to kind of like fully get it and fully enjoy it. But anyway, love-hate relationship. New Negan was coming. Season 6 ended. Negan showed up. The brouhaha. We all already know. I already knew who was going to get the living shit bashed out of them, so I wasn't surprised. As a matter of fact, 2 people died. So if you haven't watched the episode yet, you're probably just going to want to turn this off right now because I'm not going to hold back in terms of spoilers. So 2 people dies in the season 7, episode 1 premiere. They kill Abraham. Now, if you're a fan of the comics, Abraham dies way, way before that. Like, he actually dies. Okay, you remember how the chick who was, what was her name? Was she the doctor? Yeah, the girl. Okay, so the girl who was the doctor, she died with an arrow to the face on the train track, like when her Daryl and stuff went out. That's the way Abraham actually dies. Abraham actually gets an arrow to the face in the comics and dies. So when he died by getting his head bashed in by Lucille and Negan, I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't totally shocked, like, oh my God, oh, this is because, again, I've read the comics, but I was like, okay, that's a little different. I was like, I knew at some point they were going to kill him, but I didn't know when. So it was kind of interesting to kind of see them do that and see them kind of take 2 people out at once. I was like, that's a little kind of cool addition to that. And then, the character that's not in the comic, that's only in the show, Daryl gets up after, Negan kind of threatens Rosalita with Rosie with the bat, basically, that she just bashed Abraham's head in with. And Daryl gets up, he punches Negan. That's what basically makes Negan beat the shit out of Glenn with, and basically kills Glenn. And Glenn also dies in the comic. So that is the character that dies in the comic. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, again, there's nothing surprising. This is all from the comic. This is really great. Perfect execution. My issue with the whole thing, now, I saw some people were completely enamored with this episode, like, oh, this is the greatest episode since sliced bread, blah 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 blah. Probably sure they never read the comic. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm trying not to be an asshole here, but I don't necessarily agree with that, and I kind of think they blew their whole wad on this episode. And the reason why I'm saying that is because of this. Negan is a fucking psychopath. Negan is one beat, much like the governor. Come on, they're not layered. They're not complex characters. And everybody, sometimes now with the whole, new hip nerd thing, people want to write these fucking navel gazing articles about, oh, how these, this villain has so many. No, he doesn't have fucking layers. He's just a fucking lunatic. Give me a fucking break already. I think they showed too much of his lunacy too early. And what that does to me, in my personal opinion, is that you're not going to be surprised anymore. There's no buildup into like how fucking crazy he is and how much more crazier than the governor he is. Like, if you I literally said last night, I was just like, I mean, you started off so absolutely insane without any build up and too much, and like you blew your wad in one episode, so much so that the next thing, the only next thing that Negan can do to like shock me, I think, or like most people, because I was like having a conversation with a lot of people about this last night, like he literally has to fucking kill a baby. Like, he has to now be a baby killer. Like, this episode, like, you gave away so much, and so much of his lunacy was shown, and so much of his antagonistic behavior and so much of his character, I believe, was revealed all in one just solid moment that, like, I'm like, okay, so now you have what I think is supposed to be 16 episodes for this season. Now you have 15 episodes. So now I know what's going to happen. So now half of this fucking season is going to be absolute gobshite. There's going to be nothing to watch. There's going to be episodes with people just sitting down, tweedling wood and doing nothing. Because I'm like, how do you, you have to build up on this guy's lunacy. Like, this is a character that's fucking scary. Like, he's smart, he plays on emotion, like he does all these really, really cool things, and there's like a cool storyline between himself and Carl. So, like later on in the comic book and stuff like that, and I feel like you see so much of that, like that when you see that, you're not gonna be like, oh wow, like there's all this build up and man, he has so many layers, and like not now he's doing this kind of fucked up thing, because you saw the fucked up games. Like you kind of saw clearly how fucked up he is, how manipulative he is, and you're not gonna be surprised. And I feel like with villains like that, there should be a build up, especially when they're gonna be a villain for the entire season. As we know, he's gonna be the villain for the entire season, probably 2 seasons. I'm not surprised. And so that's just my one thing. I felt like it's finally great to see Negan on TV. It's finally great to see, everybody's head get bashed in and all this cool stuff. It's great to see certain nods to the comic book here and there in terms of like the Negan story and the Negan presentation. But I was just kind of like, okay, like there's no build up. And I felt the difference is and I think this is the laziness of the writers and also the show itself as a whole, and how they've approached this project since the beginning. And again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, for people, so a lot of you might be like, oh, you're being overly critical and yada, yada, yada. But my statements are substantiated by actually knowing facts and background about this whole thing. Cause I'm super into it. I'm not a wagonist. I'm not a Johnny come lately onto the whole, zombie thing, which I have an issue with that too, with the whole wagoneering and the Johnny come lately zombie. Everybody's a fucking zombie fan all of a sudden right now too. But it goes deeper, and you see it in the show. I mean, again, Frank Darabont has been embroiled into a lawsuit with this show forever. A lot of showrunners have been complaining on the low. So like, I'm very invested into this thing in terms of, always wanting it to be produced right and be done right on TV, because I thought it was such a great comic. Now, in terms of like the Negan story in the comic book, the reason why, and I feel like obviously no shit, it's different mediums, I know that, but in terms of writing and the ability to transpose that on screen, is that there's a lot of other things, interesting things that Kirkman was able to do in the comic around the Negan story. So even though it went on and it layered up and you knew he was crazy, you got to see layers of his lunacy. You got to see a buildup of it. Like, even though this thing happened, like there was still other shit, like other things and other character development that happened that you were like, oh, okay, that's cool. But also at the very same time in the comic, they somewhat did the same thing where it was just like, it was like so in your face with the lunacy that a lot of the things that happened, even in the comic book afterwards, like you were never necessarily surprised by it. And I think that in hindsight, looking back, what kind of like didn't make me kind of like feel the same way necessarily, like feels the thing that didn't make me pull back as hard while reading the comic in terms of Negan's story as it did with the TV show is that it was because as the story went on, there was other things that were happening around. And I feel like with the show, they don't necessarily do that as well. They don't tell other revolving stories around characters as well. And my example of that is like, okay, Glenn dies. Okay? Like, but before Glenn died and this whole thing was coming up, no one, like, everyone's like, oh, if Daryl dies, the whole city burns, yada, 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 all this bullshit, right? People don't understand why that is. And to me, that's a really, really big fucking problem and a big hole in AMC's, storytelling ability and different things like that. And maybe it was done on purpose. I don't know. But my thing is, how do you have a character that was created on the show and not necessarily a comic book, and you know more about him than you do about a character that's from the comic book that's supposed to be like this pivotal piece, and when he dies, everyone's heart is supposed to break when this dude dies. And think about it for a second. Tell me, if you're listening and you've watched it and you're a fan of it, tell me what you know personally about Daryl's background, which I know you're going to be able to tell me a lot more stuff, and tell me what the fuck do you know about Glenn's background. I'll wait. Just based on the show, you don't know shit because there was no character. There was no necessarily real character development given to that character, and I find that is a problem. Like you cannot have such a crazy scene on TV and build it up, and this is supposed to be this big thing, and this is supposed to be a character that was like in the comics and this big character, and everybody was like, oh my God, I can't believe, Glenn is dying when, he was stuck under the rubbish bin and that whole thing. And everybody was like all nervous. And I feel like now he's dead and everyone's like, and I feel like it was just kind of like, oh, at least it ain't Daryl. And I feel like that is not a good thing. And that goes to show you the lost opportunity, because I think it was very much like that in terms of his character development, his background story, in terms of the comic as well too. You didn't know much, and I feel like that was a perfect opportunity for them to take that moment and build and expand on this character as well, because they know that's where it was heading. So when we lost this character, it would truly feel like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe this guy is dead. And even me, I'm guilty of it. Like if Daryl would have died, I would have been like, oh shit, that's crazy, and and so on and so forth. Like and the reason why I would have mixed feelings on it, but I would still be like, oh my God, is because he's not a character from the book. I'm more familiar and I've been longer invested with the comic. So when particular characters die, I'm feeling it more. When certain things happen that I know happen in a comic, like I feel it more because I've already been invested. There was already a story in the history that's been built up. And I feel like Glenn didn't necessarily get his just due with that. And I have a big issue with that. And that's that's one of the main things that bothered me with that whole season 7 premiere as well too. It's just like, this dude is dying, and man, like with Daryl, you know about his brother, about like his whole Nazi shit, like about the issues with with their parents, and like his own emotional issues of not necessarily of loving his brother but not necessarily viewing the world the same way his brother does, and like his whole the reason why he's a survivalist and all that, like and if you say you don't know any of that, you probably didn't watch the show. You probably not been paying any fucking attention, because all of that was kind of revealed on the show, as it's been told over the last couple seasons. So like, those are the things. And, I just feel like I love Jeffrey Dean Morgan. I think he did an excellent fucking job. He is truly, truly, truly Negan. So I don't want anyone to think like, oh, I hate the actor, this and that. No. It's just my beef is more, I think, with like AMC and knowing all the shit that, the show creators and the showrunners wanted to do to make the show a better zombie show for people and make it like better than it is now. So that's just really my gripe. And because I know how they are, like I know what's gonna happen, then and like it's gonna be, and you guys out there who are listening, like if you've been watching from season 1 off and on, like there's been entire seasons where it's like nothing fucking happened. And why? Because instead of like building out on characters or writing really good stories, like they just get lazy and they just like do these lazy ass episodes where absolutely nothing happened. And I'm fine with that if there's character development going on, if there's actual true character development going on. And for a lot of The Walking Dead, when there's those lull moments in action, like very rarely do we actually get that character development. And like that is my beef. Like if you're gonna focus it on like Mayberry or wherever they are, fine, but I want some interesting, some character development that we can sink our teeth into, and that is gonna play out later down the line. Like, don't give me something that happens in season 2 and in season 6, and that shit doesn't even matter, and between season 2 and season 6, like none of that ever matters. Like you hear no reference about it. So that means like that was like throwaway dialogue and it doesn't really matter. And some of you might say like, oh, why is that important? It's important because, again, you're supposed to care. You want to care about these people. You're supposed to care. It's a survival thing. Like, you're supposed to care about everyone that you're looking at. You're supposed to have like, you're supposed to be invested, and it's on many levels. Like, I was hoping that they would do a better job with Michonne, even though she is. There's issues I have with her in the comic. I'm not gonna kind of delve into that, and I still see some issues on the show. But I've always loved her. She's always been one of my favorite characters. I think she's fucking badass. I had issues with Andrea. Andrea was a badass in the comic, and I always say this, and I think that a lot of dudes might probably get upset when I say this, but if you do, fuck you. You don't have to listen to my show because I'm not a misogynist, and if you have a problem with strong women, you need to seek, you need to get some serious help, because Andrea is a really, really strong woman in the comic. And I feel like they had an opportunity like that to do something that we probably haven't seen on TV in years. And especially within the realm of like horror and like this kind of genre, like the zombie genre, like that level of strength exuded by a woman, especially on screen. And I feel like they had like a solid opportunity to do that and they didn't do it. And so kind of like all those things that I know about the show and how they dealt with certain characters, and now this whole Negan thing, and it's just like, it was like 45 minutes of like just sheer fucking lunacy, just balls to the wall, white knuckling. And I just feel like, okay, that's cool. This was fun for me on many levels as a fan of the comic book and so on. But you have 16 more episodes to go. Where do you go from here, and how do you develop these characters? Like, so I'm very interested to see, like, I don't want entire episodes of fucking Daryl sitting in a cage. I don't want that bullshit either. Like, I'm gonna get really like, what I'm saying? Like, and I don't want, what I like to call the Dallas episodes. I don't want like, half episodes with like, meaningless flashbacks that, really don't mean anything and all that. Like, you could use those kind of things to like really tell really good story and really flesh out, stories around Negan's character and so on and so forth. But again, I'm glad people enjoyed it. I'm going to give it a chance. I'm just speaking my mind off of like, my first interaction with it being based on, again, like I said, knowledge of AMC, what's been going on, the whole Frank Darabont situation, knowledge from the comics, watching and analyzing from seasons 1 to now season 7 that just started, and watching how they're dealt with pacing, and it's not been so great. And those are my concerns, but I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm not saying that the entire season 7 of The Walking Dead is going to be absolute shite, but I'm a little on edge. I'm kind of sitting here kind of like, okay, like I hope some, like, okay, you kind of like blew your wad. Okay, you gave us 44 minutes of pure white knuckling. Like, I hope you have some really good stuff coming after this that, and it's not going to be the same old, because like I think with that kind of lunacy and that level of evil, you get tired like real quick. You're like, okay, like, dude, like the first time we saw you did a bunch of fucked up shit. Like, you made this dude think he's gonna cut his kid's arm off. Like, you bashed 2 people's brains in. Like, you did all this insane shit. Like, that revealed so much of your character, so much of your intent. Is just like, okay, where do we go from here? And hopefully they have a serious plan on where they go from here, and I hope it works out. Second thing about this is that, I made a Facebook post. I made a post talking about, it's funny to see all these quote unquote zombie fans. And I knew some people got butthurt, but I don't really give a shit. Fuck you. Cause like, I'm a fan, and, sometimes I'm a little bit elitist, and I know that. And, I try not to be, as I was doing with the whole Star Wars thing earlier in the show. But when it comes to this, my issue with people who are quote unquote zombie fans and who don't know shit about zombies is that I truly love the horror genre, and the horror genre is the redheaded stepchild of Hollywood. And I feel like if all these people quote unquote love zombies forever and love horror forever, those things would translate in terms of horror movies being successful in theaters, and they aren't necessarily so. And I feel like there needs to be, like, we need to be accountable. Like, no, okay, accountable is the wrong word. Like, I just don't like fucking wagonists. Like, that's the best way I can say it, plain and simple. Because when Dawn of the Dead came out, the reason why we never got a Dawn of the Dead sequel like we were supposed to all those times is because it, quote unquote, it didn't make as much money as it should have made. Like, you know, people wanted it, you know, it wasn't like as super successful. And I feel like if a zombie movie were to come out right now in theaters, like all the people, all these millions and millions and millions of people who run around talking about how much they love zombies and they love, you know, the horror genre, and they love this and they love that, like, they don't support the genre, and that's what rubs me the wrong way. It's just like, if you love it, fucking support it. Like, I don't mind people coming into it, but support it so it can grow, support it so we can get better stuff. Okay, like right now, if you're trying to do a horror movie, oh my god, especially a zombie movie, fucking hell, you probably won't get any financing. And if you don't believe me, you can Google. There's slews and slews of recent zombie movies that came out that had to go completely independent. You know why? Because people don't fucking support it. Like, they don't support it. So that's what kind of like gets me. So that's where I was coming from, like, mostly with that quote of like, oh yeah, we love zombies and zombies are so great, but you fucking don't support it. Like, when you go to the cons, like there's no translation between all your sappy Facebook posts about how much you love The Walking Dead and when you go to horror cons. There's no translation between all this all of a sudden, oh, I've loved zombies since I was 6 years old bullshit. You don't see it in terms of the sales of novels and supporting the horror community. The horror community is a very small community, and I listen to the likes of, say, Armand Rosamilia's podcast. I listen to, hopefully I can get him on the show as well too, to talk some really awesome horror stuff, and as well as Brian Keene, who's an author, one of my favorite authors, along with my good buddy Brian Killian, who has an amazing novel called Welcome to Necropolis, and who's doing the follow-up called Dust of the Devil's Land, I believe. It's like, if all these millions and millions of people were big, you know, zombie fans forever, and you know they love zombies so much, and they love like this and that, and they're super into it, like the horror community, and I'm super in touch with the horror community. Like, when I tell you guys, and that's why I named this podcast the Slovenly Gamer Podcast, and I said it literally highlights and discuss all things gaming and nerdy, and I also talk about like horror shit and let you guys know, like, I am that dude. Like, I am that nerd that, you know, that's into all of that shit, like anime, gaming. I use like LARPing, all of that madness I'm into, and I'm closely into the horror community. And people are telling me there's no translation. There's no translation from all this, this zombie love. And that's where my issue comes from. It's like, if you claim you love them so much, if you claim you love zombies so much, if you claim like you love horror so much, support the community. And for my FGC people who are listening, I know you guys might understand more than anybody else why I feel this way and what that means to us, because we get that. People's like, oh, I love this, I love that, but they don't fucking come out to locals, and they don't come out to tournaments, and they don't support shit, and they don't do shit to support the community. But, you know, they're always talking about, oh, I love the community, and I love this, and I love that. But, you know, that's just, you know, the social media hype. Like, we want to see actual support. So that's where my issue comes in with a lot of these people. It's just like, okay, at first I was like, you know, fuck all these Johnny-come-latelys. You didn't read the comics. Fuck you. Get out of here. Da, da, da. I was like one of those guys. Then I was like, you know what? I got to calm down. Like, you know what? The genre is growing, and people are coming in, and they're going to support, and they're not. And I'm talking to people in the horror community, and there's no translation. People aren't doing it. Like, horror movies cannot, like, if you try right now to get a zombie movie made, you won't get any financing. And that's a direct correlation, because they understand, like, hey, no, if we make this zombie movie and we spend such and such millions of dollars on it, fuck all these people on Facebook who talking about how much they love zombie movies and they love The Walking Dead and they love zombies and all this other rubbish. They're not gonna go see it. You know what I'm saying? But if it's on cable that they're already paying for, and it's a free channel, it's not a premium channel, it's fine to be enamored with it and love it and think it's the shit, but when you actually have to put into the community, so the community can grow, we can get better, and we can get better product, better films, and so on and so forth. People don't do it, so that's where a lot of my annoyance comes from with this whole, Johnny come lately wagoneering idea of like, oh yeah, I love zombies, and I've always been the biggest zombie fan, blah 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 blah. But they don't support shit, like, or they know nothing else, like, and this is not to the people who actually come in to the zombies, to the zombie sphere and only because of The Walking Dead. That's perfectly fine, because I understand, because like I'm the kind of dude, the reason why I'm reacting, because I have conversations with people. This is not assumption. These are conversations that I have with a lot of people who say, oh yeah, I love this, and when I start talking to them, you realize they don't know shit. And instead of just saying, hey, oh, like, I'm not really into zombies, but I love The Walking Dead, fine. Like, I've been in comic book stores and I've had conversations with people, and that's the thing, like, about the nerd community, the legit nerd community, and not all these fucking posers that we've been seeing in recent years. He's like, we're totally open. We'll be like, hey man, like, I watch this or I watch that, but like, I'm not really the biggest fan. I just think this shit is cool, or like my girlfriend or my boyfriend or this person got me into it, so that's why I'm kind of getting into it. But maybe later on I'll try to like expand on all the other stuff. Like, you have people doing posts and they're writing these fucking soliloquies about the characters and how the show is making them so sad and how much they love zombies and how they're gonna do all this other stuff and all the shit that they that people like to put on social media just to get a couple of likes. And then we get into conversation of actually supporting the communities. It's like, oh, well, I'm not that big of a fan now. Hey, take it easy. You want me to actually support this shit so we can get better quality stuff? Like, no, fuck you. And it's like, come on, like, you actually have to support. And I'll use myself as an example in terms of like supporting. Like, well, it's not really the same, but I've never read any of the Game of Thrones. My friend David, shout outs to my friend Mr. David Race, actually gave me, we used to work in New York together, and he gave me the first Game of Thrones book. And I remember how I found out Game of Thrones was coming on TV was I was in a bar in Brooklyn. It was this girl I was dating at the time, and we're just hanging out in the bar, and it was like this random dude and I, like, we just got into a conversation, we just started talking, and he ended up that he worked for HBO. And I don't know if I've said this story on the podcast before, but he was like, hey, have you ever heard of Game of Thrones? And I was like, you know what? It sounds familiar, but no, not really. Go ahead. And so we started talking about it, and he's like, well, we're developing the show, and it's written by Jar Jar Martin, and it's like, this really kind of like, sword and soul like story, and it's going to be really epic, and HBO is doing some really great stuff with it. And soon I heard HBO, because I love HBO, and HBO does really excellent shows. I was already on board. I was like, this shit is going to be epic. Months later, Game of Thrones comes out. It's everything that he said it is. The show is absolutely amazing. So for me, I kind of came in on Game of Thrones through the show, but I also support. So now I went back and I purchased the books, and because like I want more story to be told. Like, I want to get involved. And when I speak about Game of Thrones, I always speak from the perspective of, hey, I'm only getting in on the show, and one of these days I really want to sit down, which my buddy David is always trying to tell me to do. Sit down and you got to read the book. Like, there's so much shit that happens on the show that because you didn't read the book, like, you're totally not getting it and you're totally missing it. And I completely understand that, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, I'm the world's biggest Game of Thrones fans and anything like that. It's the same thing with the Harry Potter, with the Harry Potter books. I really got into Harry Potter through the movies. But again, I had friends, girlfriends, people like that around me that were super into the book, and they're like, hey, you got to get into it. I'm a big Harry Potter fan, but I always make a clear distinction. I'm a fan through the movies, and I love it. And I went to the whole like Harry Potter Universal and all that stuff, and I support it. And like, I buy this stuff because like I really, really enjoy it. But my portal into the quote unquote Harry Potter universe were the films, and I feel like there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just like, don't pretend like you've been here since the inception and then don't support the community. So that's basically, you see, I called it, this episode is going to be the Rambling Man episode, so now you guys know I'm like rambling all over the place, but I want you guys to support, man. Support the fucking horror community, support the horror genre. Look up Welcome to the Acropolis by Brian Killian. Buy the book. It's an awesome zombie book for all you guys who claim to love zombies so much. It's excellent. It's absolutely excellent. Dust of the Devil's Land is the follow-up. He also has like another it's kind of like a cool little compendium thing that he's doing with a couple other authors from San Diego and things like that. There's so much. I mean, go to horror cons, like, support there's a lot of really good indie horror, zombie films that are out there that aren't making any money and can't make money, or trying to get developed and can't develop because they can't get the finances. So if you guys really support, if you guys truly love, quote unquote, love zombies, like how you say you love zombies, like, let's see it in the actual horror / zombie community. We want to see that. We want to see that translated. Like, just don't give me Facebook posts. Like, let's see it. Let's make it happen. Support the people. Buy the novels. Read them. Go to the meetups, do all those cool stuff, because if you truly love it, you invest in it because you want to see it grow. And those are the things that helps it grow. Facebook posts don't help shit grow. Like, it doesn't. Like, okay, you made a Facebook post, so fucking what? Like, go out, go to the horror cons, like, support these authors who their only job is, they're a writer and that's what they do. They write really good stuff. Support those. Support people who want to make like really, really good, indie movies, like, indie horror movies. Like, support them. That's what we need. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to see just this big burgeoning of like, it's online and everybody support it and everybody is just, talking rubbish. But when it comes to actual putting, like putting your shoulder to the wheel and putting in support, then we're not getting any support. And I feel like, that's unfair and it's fucking uncool. And even though I'm glad to see a lot of people kind of getting into the genre and loving the genre, I want to see actual support of this genre, like other things. Like, you see it with Star Wars. All the people who kind of come on board and say they're Star Wars fan and they're just getting on board, you see them supporting it. Like, you see those seats, those butts filled with seats. You see it when you go to Disney and like, all the different Star Wars things. Like, you see it. People are spending the money on it. And I feel like for everyone who, quote unquote, loves zombies so much, I want to see that same translation. Like, we need to support it because, trust me, the horror genre is it's not as simplistic as people think. And what I'm going to end with, a recommendation, if you want to know the greatness that can come out of the horror genre and the subgenre of zombies, is you have to look into the works of, again, those authors I told you about prior, Brian Killian, Brian Keene, and so forth, but also, and even, I'm forgetting my friend I just recently interviewed in the show, Mark Tufo, who has a great zombie Fallout novel. It's really excellent. But you want to look into the works of George A. Romero. Like, you want to look into those films because you'll see, like, there's so many layers. There's like, there's so many complex. There's like, there's socioeconomic statements and all these things like wrapped up into these zombie movies. And the zombies are not necessarily, they're background players to the human condition of the people who are still alive in that quote unquote dead world, in the zombie world. And I think that's the beauty, but all wrapped up in this thing that we all fear, which is zombies, like this fun kind of thing. And, and they are like fun zombie movies as well too. But again, we need to support them. We need to go out there and we need to spend those dollars and show them that, like, we're really fans. Like, we really want to see this thing grow. We really want to see them be able to, put the money into their films and develop the films and give us, because trust me, like, zombie creators specifically want to give us the best work. And if you don't believe me, look at people like Tom Savini. Like, look at people like Greg Nicotero. And Greg Nicotero is a dude who does the makeup and all that stuff on the Walking Dead show. But he started out with George A. Romero and Tom Savini in Day of the Dead in like 1980 something. But before that, he actually met Romero in Paris while on a family vacation as a kid. And, Romero just kind of like took him under his wing, that's what we need to see. We need to see more community like that, more community building and being able to support so people like that can do what they do to the best of their ability. So when they make a horror film, they're giving us excellent stuff, because, it's like, you can't not support the community. Then when someone tries to make a zombie film, then you complain about the CGI looks like shit or the makeup looks like shit. Well, you're not fucking supporting them. You're not putting money in this community. So how are they supposed to make a good product? How are they supposed to make a good product if you're not investing in this community? Huh? Exactly. So that rant's over. One last thing I'm going to touch on. Wow. I've been ranting for like damn near an hour. I can't believe this. Wow. So the last thing is, and this is switching gears up as we get out of here, video games. And the game that I'm super, super excited to finally say has landed is, well, it hasn't landed, but you know, they're letting us know that it's coming out, and that's Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, I've waited for this game so damn long, and I know you guys have too. And to finally know that it's coming in the fall of 2017 is so bloody fantastic. Like, I mean, I can't tell you guys, like Red Dead was one of my favorite games on PS3. Hands down. I don't even have to think. You ask me tomorrow, you ask me Tuesday, you ask me, like, Red Dead Redemption. And I love fucking Skyrim. And Skyrim, you know what? No. You guys are going to laugh at me right now. It's probably equally tied between Skyrim and Red Dead Redemption. But Red Dead Redemption may eke it out on certain days, depending on how I'm feeling. But Red Dead Redemption, folks, like, you guys, like, this game is so phenomenal. Such an expansive world. And from what I've seen from the trailer and everything like that, I mean, again, I'm not one of these, like, you know, spend 20 minutes like analyzing a trailer or anything like that. But, you know, I can ramble about a trailer for 20 minutes. But what I saw that looked interesting that I just wanted to touch on really quickly, aside from the fact that it's finally coming and, you know, we can actually really get excited about this because it's, you know, it's actually coming. It's real. You know, it's kind of like the whole Last Guardian thing. You know, we waited for so long for all the Last Guardian fans, and finally we have like a solid, you know, time. Well, not a solid day, but we know, like, you know, we have like a solid year, kind of like month kind of thing, so we can kind of, you know, our obsession has been validated for all these years, and it's somewhat of a similar feeling with Red Dead, even though we've been waiting longer for Last Guardian. So now, watching the trailer, I noticed a couple things that seemed interesting, so I want to see more about it. And that is, aside from, like, you know, the views of the world and things like that, it looks much better, much cleaner. Like, there's like, it looks like at one point there's a shot where it looks like one animal kills another, so that'll be cool if there's like more of like an evolved and like growing ecosystem of animals kind of like, you know, interacting with each other on that particular level. I think that'd be cool. Because I think in Red Dead, and someone can tell me if I'm wrong on this, I think that the only time you kind of saw animals, like, you would see them dead, but I don't think we necessarily saw panthers killing any deer or anything like that. Because I know panthers are what they had, and I think they had some bears too. And I think generally it would be by accident, like during a fight or something. But I don't know if there was like any specific hunting going on like that in Red Dead Redemption 2. I vaguely remember there being some, but I'm not 100% sure. So, but I'm sure with this one is going to be more of it, and it's kind of be like probably going to be ramped up a little bit more. What I found interesting is if you look at the still of the trailer and you look to the right of the screen and you kind of close in, it looks like there might be a female protagonist or antagonist, depending on, you know, who those, you know, who the seven are in this movie. I was gonna say in the movie because of the Magnificent Seven. So that's interesting. Now you're gonna say, how do you know? But if you zoom in, you can tell from the blouse. You can tell from the blouse that, you know, it looks like silky material, and there's like a cuff around the wrists that's very indicative of female clothing for that era. You know, it's like a blouson. I don't know if that's the right thing. It's like very puffy. I think that's what they called it, like blouson. So there's like this weird little puff around the hand that kind of made me think like, okay, like that'd be cool. Like, so we're seeing some mix up, a little bit of diversity in the starring cast. That's kind of cool. And then if you go, I think like probably back towards the center, there's a dude who appears to be wearing, he very well could be, or it just could be a white dude wearing Native American pants, but his pants seem to be of like a Native American origin. I don't know. It looked like it was kind of like plain Indians, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. But I know it looked very much like Native American stuff. So those are the two things that I noticed just like off the bat from the trailer and things like that kind of like got me interested, aside from actually seeing a trailer. So I'm excited about that. And, when as the story goes on, more develops, I'll talk about it, and let you guys know what I think as more information releases about the game. If you guys want to know, tweet at me, message me, whatever. And if you want me to talk about it, I'll definitely look into it and I'll share my thoughts on this with you guys. But as of right now, that's it, folks. I'm out of here, man. It's thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for listening to this sick to this sick guy, ramble for over an hour about Star Wars and zombies and shit. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys for all your support. Every message, every tweet, every retweet, every share really means the world to me. And I really, really and truly thank you guys for all your support. I really appreciate it. And for those who are new to the show, please remember, if you're listening on iTunes, remember to like, share, rate, and subscribe to the show, please. Also, you can follow me on all social media platforms. I am on Twitter at Slovenly Gamer. I'm on Facebook at Slovenly Gamer. So remember to go over and smash a like button on that page for me. I'm on Instagram at Slovenly Gamer as well. And, just follow me on those platforms. I interact with people. I answer messages and things like that. And any one of you out there who's ever messaged me, who's ever tweeted at me, I respond. I take critiques. I don't have any problem, with having a conversation because it's fun. I enjoy it, and this is why I do it. I'm just a nerd who enjoys talking about all this nerdy shit, that we used to have to hide from people all those years ago. So I want conversation. I welcome it, and tell me guys, tell me like what you think. Tell me, how you felt about the season 7 premiere of The Walking Dead. Tell me if you like the show. Tell me if you read the comics. If you want to know my thoughts, in terms of if you should read the comics, I'm going to tell you right now, you don't even have to wait for the answer. Yes, you should read the comics and support it because it's important that we do that. And on that note, I'm going to end the rant. And I'm thinking, what music should I put on here? You know what? I think I'm gonna do some De La Soul, me, myself, and I, because I'm feeling like that. I'm a little sick. I'm about to get out of here and go take some NyQuil, guys. Thanks for listening. Peace.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, tell me, mirror, what is wrong? Can it be my De La clothes or is it just my De La song? What I do ain't make believe. People say I sit and try, but when it comes to being De La, it's just me, myself, and I. Myself and I. It's just me, myself and I. Now you tease my plug one style and my plug one spectacle. You say plug 1 and 2 are hippies nowhere. Now that's pure plug 4. Always pushing that we formed an image. There's no need to lie. When it comes to being plug 1, it's just me, myself and I. Myself and I. It's just me, myself and I. It's just me, myself and I. Proud of what I am. Poems I speak are plugged too tight. Please, oh please, let plug 2 be himself, not what you read, alright? Right is wrong when hype is written on the soul, they lie, that is. Style is surely our own thing, not the false disguise of showbiz. They lie solely from the soul, and this fact I can't deny. Strictly from the Dan called Stucky, and from me, myself, and I. Just me, myself, and I. It's just me, myself, and I. It's just me, myself, and I. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory for plug 1 and 2. But that glory's been denied by cassids and gooky eyes. People think they diss my person by stating I'm darkly packed. I know this, so I point at Q-tip and he states
black is black.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, shovel chestnuts in my path. Just keep all nuts with the nuts so I don't get an aftermath.
But if I do, I'll calmly punch them in the 4th day of July. Cause they try to mess with 3rd degree, that's me, myself, and I. It's just me, myself, and I. It's just me, myself, and I.